and gentlemen, welcome to Sinister Creature Con. My name is Jimmy, the panel director. I am joined up here right now by my fellow moderators, Charlie, Jay, Ashley. Throughout today and tomorrow, we will be bringing you presentations that are unquestionably some of your favorites in the horror genre. I cannot wait. It starts off in roughly 5 minutes with the horror host Miss Misery and Lord Blood-Rah, two Sinister Creature Con constants that I have always had fun getting to talk to. Today, Charlie, I can give him a little bit of an introduction. Charlie is my 5th grade teacher, and I knew that Mr. Williams at that time and I had a similar love of horror films because he read us Goosebumps books. And through the time, we just kind of kept in contact thanks to social media. Charlie then was nice enough to proofread my first screenplay that would turn into a film that won awards internationally that I'm super proud of. And the film stars Charlie as the main antagonist. And then through then, Charlie developed his own role, so to speak, on the podcasting network that always features all these interviews at Sinister Creature Con. We re-air, we both post for Sinister, and then we put the audio on the podcast. Makes my job as producer of the podcast way easier because we have this great library to pull from. But Charlie really has been a mainstay to my team and the Sinister Creature Con team. But he has never interviewed these two, so I'm super interested to see what you guys talk about, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was telling some of the people in the audience that I, and in fact, Lord Blood-Rah outside the door in Miss Misery, that I'm like one of the world's oldest monster kids. Because usually when you come up to somebody and you say, I'm a monster kid, they know exactly what you're talking about. You love monsters, you love creepy, slimy things that go bump in the night. And in my case, it's been a lifelong love. So Jim and I made that connection again, and now we're not just teacher, student, but we're good friends. So I'm looking forward to interviewing our 2 guests. And I think it's really great that they're the first guests that we're going to have. Because you always want somebody to kind of guide you through, right? When you watch a scary movie, it's always fun to have somebody host the movie and make little jokes about it and stuff like that. But, so our whole convention, that's the theme of our whole convention is horror. So to start out with these 2 is going to be especially appropriate because they're going to kind of give us that introduction to the other activities today.
Sure. Jay and Ashley, we definitely have a ton of great guests this weekend, and that continues after this panel. I just want to shout out to you guys that Ashley will be interviewing From the Craft, Rachel True, and then after that, Jay will be interviewing, is it Tyler Labine?
Tyler Labine.
Yeah, Tyler Labine from Tucker and Dale versus Creeper, New Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Wife is so excited to see Iggy up here. So, all that is coming up. We still have Adam Green. We have the cosplay competition. We have 2 out of the 3 clerks today. So huge program today, but those are your next 2 after this one. But with that, Charlie, I will leave things to you.
Thank you, little Jimmy Greenholz.
Yeah.
Did you leave it on?
Yeah, it's good. I was kind of getting into this as I was talking to Jim, and what I'd like to say is it doesn't matter how different our backgrounds are, we're all here today because we share a love of horror. We love scary stories, we love television programs, and we especially love horror films. And what's more fun than watching a scary movie with a horror host who enriches the experience by giving you all these macabre facts that are connected to the movie, using humor to kind of poke fun at some of the sillier aspects of the film, and just having a character that just hints at a touch of menace. Now we have not one, but two Hall of Fame horror hosts to kick off our panels on this edition of Sinister Creature Con. So let's welcome the High Lord of Geekdom, Lord Blood-Rah, and the hauntingly beautiful Miss Misery. So nice to have you here today, like I was saying. And Lord Blood-Rah. It's so nice to have you guys here today. And like I was saying, it's appropriate to have two horror hosts kick off a horror convention.
That's
because
right.
you serve as guides through the spooky things that we encounter when we invest the time in a scary movie.
Yes.
Now, I was 7 or 8, and I would watch the old shock theater programs. This was like the old, for those of you who don't know, it's like the old Universal films that were sold to local stations, because the local stations at that time, television was so new, they were starved for content. But almost all of them would show these movies late on Friday or Saturday night. And a lot of times there would be a horror host that would introduce these movies. And they were all, most of them were local, but they all had distinctive personalities and characters. Now, I used to watch those horror films with my mom. My mom is the one that got me into it. It was really a treat to stay up late with her on Friday or Saturday night.
That's great.
And watch a scary movie. So I became a monster kid, and I never outgrew it.
Good for you.
How did each of you fall in love with the things that go bump in the night?
Oh, thank you. Well, when I was younger, Saturday nights, I would go to bed, but my father would wake me up to watch back-to-back two small little horror shows called Monsters and Tales from the Dark Side. So he would wake me up and I would watch those late at night. And this was before I watched an actual, like, John Carpenter's Halloween. That was the movie I really fell in love with horror. But those were the shows I was watching. And of course I grew up with Elvira. So I would watch Elvira as well. So yeah, my Saturday nights with my dad was Monsters and Tales from the Dark Side, and it went from there, and it was snowballed, basically.
Lord Blood-Rah, how about you?
I grew up watching Bob Wilkins hosting Creature Features on Channel 2 every Saturday night, then every Friday and Saturday night. And he was the doorway to the Universal classics, the Godzilla films, Hammer films, cheesy 50s sci-fi, all of it. And just watching him present these things and just his humor about it. And later John Stanley too, after Bob retired.
Of course.
It made me fall in love with the entire genre.
Yeah.
Just because it was introduced in such a fun, great way, and watching it with Bob, watching it with a friend,
right,
is what it felt like. You know, that's the way his dry sense of humor, the way he just looked down the barrel of the camera, talking to the audience, was wonderful, and it just turned me on to horror for the rest of my life.
Yeah, kind of the Woody Allen of horror films.
In all the best possible senses.
In all the best possible ways, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do need to say that now.
Right,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
Right.
Now, Bob Wilkins was also my first real horror host that I made an attachment to. And if I remember right, didn't he start in the Sacramento area?
Yep. Originally,
and
yeah.
then he moved over to the Bay Area and Channel 2, and his audience, of course, broadened because of that. But it was always such a communal thing for me. You know, we'd always have some member of the family. I talked about my mom, that was the real early years. Later, it was my girlfriend who later became my wife, and sometimes we let my little sister watch with us. And I agree with you about Bob in terms of making, it was like watching with a friend.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it was like you were in on this big joke, and you are all part of this communal experience.
That's right. And I mean, the horror community that's in the Bay Area now, the older folks like me formed around that show.
Yeah.
Because we grew up watching that show. And watching Creature Features, you hear about the latest books, movies coming out, conventions.
Right.
He would make convention appearances, and it was he formed this kind of tight-knit little group.
Right.
And you knew back then it was like, you know, you couldn't record these things, or it was appointment television. You had to sit down when it was on and watch it. And you knew that other people, other geeks like you in the Bay Area were all watching Creature Features at the same time.
Yeah, did you guys, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, which was wonderful. It was
Oh, okay.
wonderful.
Did you guys go to the TV Guide and circle like horror films that
Oh,
were getting
gosh.
done? Because that was something I always did, and it didn't matter if I'd seen it before, but I would go through every week and I would circle every
Yeah.
horror or science fiction movie that was in the TV Guide.
I did do
A
that.
lot of people don't understand because you have, you know, now you have access to everything
Yes.
through
Right.
streaming platforms and
not as
cable
fun.
and satellite
It's not as
TV.
fun.
It's not.
It's just not.
It's
I don't
not.
think it
I
is.
Because if
agree
you missed it,
100%.
it might not come back for another year,
That's right.
if ever.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, Lord Blood-Rah, I
Yes.
understand that you owe a debt to perhaps the worst film ever to be made, Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yes, I do.
Because that
Absolutely.
was the catalyst that got you into hosting.
Yeah. First of all, in no way, shape, or form was it the worst film ever.
Okay.
But, that's how Lord Blood-Rah came about. Some close friends of the family owned a winery in Castro Valley, the Chenard Winery. And I introduced the winemaker to the film Plan 9 from Outer Space. And he flipped. He loved it. He said, "This is fantastic. I didn't know these kind of films existed." And they did events at the winery. And he said, "I would love to show this at the winery." And I was like, "Well, that's great. Yeah, but you know, you don't just show the film. You got to put a show around it. You need a host and everything like that." So I contacted a local host who came out and made some claims and promises about the show that didn't happen. The show came off and it was great and it worked, but there were some things that were just off about it. So the next day he came over to the house, and we're sitting there with him, me and my wife, and we're drinking a glass of wine. He said, "I want to do this every year. This is great. I want to show a different film every year, or a series of films every year. But I don't want to use that host. Do you know anybody else who could do it?" And I'm thinking, well, I could contact John Stanley, but he's kind of getting up there. I don't know if he'd want to make the trip or whatever. And my wife turned to me and said, "Why the hell don't you do it?" And it was like, I had no answer, so I just did it. So the next year was the very first appearance of Lord Blood-Rah at the winery. And I did a series of films there every fall for 10 years. And the winery, unfortunately, just sold. It was a death in the family, so they just sold like about a year ago. So the winery no
Oh,
longer
that's a
exists.
shame.
But that was where I first fell in love with hosting. And it was all due to Plan 9 from Outer Space. Although the first film that I hosted was Bucket of Blood.
Oh, okay.
Was,
The old
Roger
Roger
Corman's
Corman.
Blood.
Yeah. Miss Misery, how did the Last Doorway series begin? And how did it lead to Miss Misery and Movie Massacre?
Well, when I first started shooting short horror films, I kept thinking, how am I going to get my foot in the door into the entertainment industry, especially the horror industry? How am I supposed to go to these cons and pitch myself? Nobody knows who I am. So I thought, hey, I grew up on Elvira. I love Elvira. what I can do is start a show. And then I went to a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in San Jose. And I met a horror host there named Joe Flynn of the Joe Flynn Show. Yeah, and him and his host Priscilla, co-host, were interviewing and doing things. I'm like, this is the idea I had. So we went out to dinner, I asked questions, and I said, hey, this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna create a persona, Miss Misery. I'm already goth, so that's no problem. And then I started The Last Doorway show. Now, The Last Doorway name was something I had in my mind since I was a kid, because I wanted to grow up to create my own Twilight Zone series and call it The Last Doorway. So I thought, The Last Doorway. So I created the show, and I started going to cons, I started doing interviews and getting my name out there and meeting people, and then from there it just kind of started to snowball. And then 85 episodes later, I was asked at another show in San Jose, I think it was Big Wow, we were both at. Big Wow?
Big Wow,
convention?
yeah,
where
San Jose, yeah.
Sue Joy Sakar,
Right.
who ran out of Chabot College, a channel that wanted me to host movies. So I said, well, every horror host hosts the same movie, I'm not interested. But after thinking about it, I said, well, why not? So now I'm 150 episodes later, and I'm not stopping soon, so.
Was that the
It's
same
been crazy.
convention?
That's the same one where he
Where he
approached
asked
me,
me too.
and he asked you.
Yeah, I
So
said
we
yes.
both got- And I said no, and then I said yes.
Yeah.
Days later, I emailed him. I said sure,
Okay.
and he said he had you. I said
Okay,
cool,
okay.
back to back.
Now, I said yes before I had a show. He said, oh, so
Yes,
we'd like
yes.
to air your show, and I said, sure. I didn't have a show. I started filming the show. I got a camera and put the set together, started filming the show. Yeah, so that was the same convention.
Yeah,
That's funny. I
it was
didn't
the
realize
same
it was the
con.
same
Isn't that
convention.
crazy?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that you guys mentioned that connection.
Mhm.
Because I was going to ask you, it's obvious that you guys know each other well,
Oh yeah.
that you've been friends and colleagues
For a long
for a
time.
long, long time. In fact,
Yeah.
I think it was an episode of Movie Massacre where you were hosting White Zombie. And I think it was like from 12 or 13 years ago, which I didn't
Yeah.
realize at the time, and then I looked at the date on it. And so you guys really have known each other and kind of shared this,
Long time.
Well,
you know,
that's
this
actually-
career for a long time. How did you guys get together? I mean, was it at a
I
convention?
don't remember. But even before that, I think the first time I was on camera, even before I shot my first episode, you asked me to do a segment.
Yeah.
So I did the Annals of Awesome Oddness.
Which I always mess the name up.
Where I would, yes, you
I'm not repeating myself, but I messed that.
I would just like talk about sit in the electric chair
Yep.
and
yes.
read from a scroll this
Yeah.
like weird
It
paranormal
was great.
events. It was really very fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was I
Yeah.
think the first time I was on camera
But I
was
don't
on your show.
remember how we met. We met at a con or a festival or something.
We met
I don't
at
remember.
WonderCon.
Was it WonderCon?
We met at
That's
WonderCon.
right, it was WonderCon.
Yeah,
Yes.
because you interviewed me.
I interviewed you, that's right.
Yeah.
For the last
I don't know why you
show.
interviewed me because I didn't have any.
You were interesting.
Who's this geek walking around at a top hat? Hey, we'll interview him.
Yeah.
Lloyd Blood-Rah, how did tremulous trailers turn into nerve-wracking
Oh.
theater with the High Lord of Geekdom hosting full-length movies?
I started Tremulous Trailers, which is basically me hosting trailers on YouTube primarily as a way to promote the live shows, to kind of get my name out there and promote the live shows I was doing at the winery. Because that was my focus. It was like, okay, I'll do live shows. Then it wasn't until Sujoy said, I want to air your TV show, that I thought, okay, I guess I'm putting together a TV show now. So I did. So Tremulous Trailers just kind of petered out, and I started doing Nerve-Wracking Theater, which now I think that's about 13 years ago, right? 12,
Yeah.
13 years, 12,
Yeah,
13
I believe
years
so.
ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So it started at Channel 27
Yeah,
at
27.
Chabot College, And now I'm on the Nostalgia Network, like nationwide streaming and OTA, Saturday nights, West Coast Saturday nights at 6 p.m. and again at 11 p.m. on Saturday nights on the Nostalgia Network. And 14 years ago, if you had said to me, you're gonna be a horror host, I would have said you're crazy. I would have said, no, there's no way. But as I started doing it, I've always loved horror, but as I kind of fell into it and had the opportunity, I just fall in love with it. I can't imagine not doing it.
And sometimes life, I think, chooses you rather than,
Oh, I agree.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
those opportunities, but you took full advantage of those opportunities. Miss Misery, you hosted, Lord Blood-Rah was talking about hosting the live shows at the winery. But you spent a good deal of time hosting a Nightmare to Remember Film
Oh,
Fest
yeah.
in San Francisco too, which is basically a live show as well, right?
Yes, it was for short horror films. It was a festival, film festival, and we did that for I think 6 or 7 years straight. And I got burnt out on it, but man, was it fun. We would have goodie bags at the door for the first 20 people who
Wow.
came.
Oh,
We
I have
should-
to ask, what was in the goodie bags?
Toys, horror toys, comic books, anything we could grab. We got and we put in the goodie bags for people. And it was a 3-hour event every time at the Opera Plaza Theater in San Francisco. Boy, was that fun. We'd show short films, give out coffin awards that we had made.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, with my face on them, of course.
Remote?
And
Remote?
it was 7 years of God, making great friends and getting people's names out there. 'Cause
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of film festivals at the time that showed short films, so that's
Right.
why I did it. And from there, I did midnight shows in San Francisco for a few years, and then I did some shows with Blood-Rah. We
Yeah.
hosted.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
until my time. I'm a horror host, I'm a director, I'm an author. I mean, I have a lot going on, so sometimes it's hard to
Amazingly
balance.
creative. You're amazingly creative. I was doing some research for the panel, and I could not believe how you multitask and how talented you are in all these different areas.
Thank you.
I had the privilege of interviewing Joe Bob Briggs here at Sinister Creature Con a couple of times.
Joe's awesome.
And one thing that surprised me, I was telling a couple before we started the panel, one thing that surprised me about him was that I was expecting when I first met him to have this guy, he's so quick and gregarious and just rapid fire and everything like that. And when I first met him, I found him to be almost shy. And not at all like the character that he portrays. And and of course his alter ego is John Bloom, who's a serious writer. He just had a couple of shows that were on streaming platforms, I think Hulu and, I want to say Netflix, but I'm not sure which the other one. Max. Where it told the story of Candy Montgomery, who was this normal housewife that ended up murdering one of her best friends over an affair with her husband. I mean, it's a real serious kind of expose. So my question to both of you is, and we'll start with you, Lord, how far apart is the real person from the character? Because I would assume that at some point there is some kind of divergence there. What would surprise us to find out about you personally that would not be like the character?
Well, what's funny is
love this
that first live gig, I had developed a whole different voice and persona. It was going to be more this kind of cool kid. Oh my lords and ladies, I've got some real horror classics for you tonight. And I practiced that voice, and as soon as I got up on stage, it lasted 2 seconds and went over. Because I kind of realized that that's fake. That's not
Yeah.
me. So I would say Lord Blood-Rah is me with any inhibitions about being a complete and utter geek, ripped away and replaced with pride in the fact that I'm a horror geek. I always say that Lord Blood-Rah will be happy when the Super Bowl is held in a little freeway side hotel and horror conventions are held in stadiums. That's that's my thing, is full on pride in being a horror and science fiction geek. Yeah, and it's from that the humor in the show comes from. So there's a hair's difference from, I mean, if I was Lord Blood-Rah regularly in my daily life, I probably couldn't function because I'd be watching horror and sci-fi all day long. I actually do that now. It's the same. There's no difference, actually, is what I've just come to realize. I wasn't realizing, I didn't think I was going to have a personal revelation on stage, but there's very little difference, I guess.
You know, we ask probing questions.
I guess
This is
so.
the Creature Con.
I'm going to be talking about that.
Miss Misery, how about you? How close is the character and your own personality?
I would have to say my normal self has no ego, but Miss Misery has the ego. That's pretty much the difference. But there is no difference in a way, because I do try to act like myself, except I take it up a notch.
Yeah.
You know, the ego
Yeah, I
thing,
understand exactly
you know.
what you mean. Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, I've always been the girl who wore all black with black lipstick. I've always been the girl who watched horror films and nobody else wanted to. So it's really no different in a way.
Yeah.
This, I get to just show up.
Yeah.
You know, I get to finally just be me.
Well, like you said, just taking it up a notch,
Yeah.
which is a perfect explanation. Miss Misery, what were the zombie proms? I mean, how did that get started? And describe that event for us.
Well, when we were doing, I think it was during the time we were doing the film festival, I did throw a few zombie proms in San Francisco, and the reason for that was because it sounded fun. It would get people to come out and dress up. And again, it was an outlet to get the horror community together, people out there who needed an outlet, somewhere to go. So that's why I threw the zombie proms. But San Francisco is a lot of, it's 50-50 there. Like, you don't know if you're going to get a good crowd, or you don't know if people want to spend their money to come out. So we did just a few of them to kind of experiment, and they came out really well. We did sell out on them.
Wow.
Yeah, but again, after a couple, I was just like, how many of these can I do though, to take up my time when I have to host here and do the film fest and do this. But maybe one day I'll bring it back.
Look like I saw some pictures I have, and I strongly suggest, if you're a fan of horror hosts, that you buy Miss Misery's Movie Massacre Behind the Scenes book, because this outlines her career starting from the early days, and it's filled with pictures. There are a lot with Lord Blood-Rah, which is how I knew that they were friends. But there are illustrations and just a really complete picture of the development of a horror host that I think is fascinating. Now, with regard to the live events and the TV experience, how would you compare the two? What is the difference between the two for you, or is there a difference? I mean, the live performance, of course, has a live audience.
Yeah.
But what do you see as the main difference between the television productions and the live theater experience?
Oh.
It's for both of you, so whoever wants to answer.
Well, I would have to say, to me, it's kind of no difference. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a camera, obviously, people are watching. Same thing as hosting it, everyone's watching. I don't have this thing where I get nervous or anything, I just do it. So I think, I don't really think about it. So for me, it's kind of the same in a way. It is nicer to host a live event because you get to see your fans up close, you get to talk to people, you get to get feedback. So I would have to say, I mean, to me, in a way, not too much of a difference other than the interactions always nice.
Was it always easy for you to get up in front of the stage, or was that something that came gradually?
Well, I used to, when I was a little girl, my dad would bring me out to audition for commercials and stuff. So I used to do commercials, national television commercials. And
Right.
I would be an extra in films, and yeah, I grew up in entertainment.
So it's in your
pretty much.
DNA,
Yeah,
pretty
I
much.
would just do it,
Yeah.
basically.
What about you, Lloyd?
Well, when I'm doing the TV show, it's 100% scripted. So it's more of a performance. It's kind of, setting up the joke, doing the joke, selling the joke, while also having the audience feel like they're watching the movie with me, with a friend, So it's more of a performance thing in TV, whereas live, it's much more, I'm presenting the film, I'm gonna give you information, I've got an idea of what I'm gonna say, but live, you've gotta stay loose to react to the
Mhm.
audience, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's more playing with the audience, it's a little more, I would say I'm closer to real me live than I am on the TV show. There's a slight difference, because there are things, oh yeah, there's things you can do looking down the barrel of the camera that you can't do live because you look insane. It doesn't work.
That's true.
Speaking of live, I host a regular monthly live show down at the Orinda Theater called Chiller Diller Theater.
Oh, wow.
As a matter of fact, I'm supposed to be there tonight, but I filmed a bit before them. I obviously couldn't be there tonight. But so I have a regular monthly live show that I really enjoy doing.
Wow.
Because it's presenting these classics to audiences that really enjoy them. So, I think that's basically the answer. It's more of a more of a laid back, interactive thing than it is TV, because you can only be so interactive with a TV show.
That's true.
Yeah.
You guys are both so heavily involved. Like, Lloyd, you just mentioned the writing of your show, that it's scripted, and I know you do the writing, and I know you're an accomplished author with a series of children's books and that are geared, towards the spooky part of life.
It's called Monsters.
Yeah.
I named it after the monster show that I used to watch when I was younger.
So, but you're so involved creatively on every level of your programs. What's the process of producing the shows, and what do you start with? Do you choose the movie first, and then you well, of course that makes sense. That's kind of a dumb question. So you build the show around the movie, and but what about production? One thing I noticed about both of your programs watching them was that the production values had grown as the years had progressed. So just what is that process like in putting together a show?
Well, I still have my hair, so that's good. It's basically, I write the list, like right now I'm on season 9, and there's gonna be 20 episodes. So I have every single movie picked out. Then I'll go watch every movie, do my bits about the film, the history of the film, start getting the segments together. I write all the scripts, so it takes me about a week, depending, because I do have a child now. So it takes me about a week to do 20 scripts, to write them, while watching the films and doing everything.
Wow.
And then because I shoot the show in my house, which I have no dining room. The dining room is the show. I'm kid you not. It's great. So I can just film when I need to, whenever I want, so, and then my husband does lighting and camera. And then we shoot, I like to shoot like at least 6 episodes at a time.
Sure.
And then I'll edit all of them, which takes me a few weeks. And then my husband comes in and he does the fine tuning, like sound work, lighting, anything like that. And then that's how we do it, and then get them to the stations.
That is so cool that it's kind of a family
It is,
effort.
yeah.
Because I was talking to Lloyd briefly when we were introduced today.
Yeah.
And I had seen Logan in some of your films.
Yep, he's gonna be doing some more.
He's adorable.
Actually, yeah. Thank you.
Lord Blood-Rah?
Yeah, the studio is in one of the bedrooms in the house. I'll pick the movie, I usually pick them like a season at a time. I'll pick the movie, watch them in segments, usually about 10-minute segments, and break, and then write my segment, throwing in and out of, in or out of commercial. And if there was something in that segment that caught my attention that, well, that's funny, or I should point that out to the audience, or something interesting that happened, I'll base it on that. I'll usually joke about something that's very strange. Very sparsely will I interrupt the movie, you know, in the middle of a segment. Just because if I feel like the joke won't land if they wait 7 minutes for the thing to go, then I'll break in real quick and then go right back to the movie. So I write the script. Usually it can take me between 1 to 2 days to write between 12 to 15 segments per movie. And then I go into the room and it's just an idiot in a room by himself, talking to himself with the camera pointed at him. So then I edit it and send it off. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I'm really fortunate, starting in September, with the Nostalgia Network, I'll no longer be limited to public domain films.
Wow.
So,
wow, that is a big step.
So I'm going to be hosting the Hammer films, the Universal Classics,
Oh my gosh.
other classic
Yeah.
films.
That's cool.
And
That is
right
very
now,
cool.
the plan for Halloween night, which is a Tuesday, the plan for Halloween night is to do a 4-hour special hosting Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh my God, we'll be
Yeah.
watching that.
Thank you, Miles. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, we have, I want to stop and take some time so that we can, okay. So unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our time. I still have about 3 pages of questions. So I want you guys, next time you come back, I hope you'll let me interview you
Oh,
again.
of course.
Please, absolutely.
And
Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on a lot of things we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Mr. Executioner. We didn't
Oh,
talk
Mr. Torture.
about- we didn't talk about all the platforms. I'm glad you brought up the Nostalgia
Oh, thanks.
channel because you're on all these platforms that go all the way across the United States.
Well, YouTube, yeah. I've got
Yeah.
3 shows on YouTube. I've got the Nerve-Wracking
Yeah.
Theater, the Nerve-Wracking Auditorium podcast, and then Captain Paxar's Star Cadet Hour, which is old kids' 50 sci-fi shows.
Well, again, I thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
Being,
Thank you, yes.
being our guides through such an important part of all of our lives. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all for coming.
I'm buying the tables.
Yeah, come by our tables. We have merchandise you have to buy.
Yes, absolutely. Books, merchandise, I highly recommend it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.